Man, this is so pretty. Just like completely multicolored. I see the teal, I see the champagne, I see the gold, I see the copper. It's great. Hey everybody, it's Anna. Welcome back to my SheleeArt channel. Thank you so much for stopping by. So today I'm doing a bloom pour. You might have noticed because I've got the giant jug of house paint here. Yeah, I'm doing another bloom pour because you may have seen my video from a few weeks ago where I did this beautiful green and gold center bloom blowout, and it turned out so beautiful, except when I let it dry, it cracked. And so I've been thinking about why did it crack, what were the problems, and I thought I just have to try again with the exact same colors, but I'm going to make a few changes to try to fix some of the mistakes that happened. So the first mistake was that I used too much of my green, my Viridian color. I made a big puddle of that, and then a little bit of the other colors. This time I'm going to be using much more of a mix of colors instead of starting with a giant layer of the green, and hopefully that will give us a more kind of multicolored effect. Second thing I'm changing is I'm using a slightly bigger canvas. This is a 14-inch canvas instead of a 12 by 12, so that when I make the design, which should be about the same size, I can spin it even more and get off more of that paint, because a thinner layer of paint that you have at the end of your painting session means that it is less likely to crack. So those are the two main changes that I'm doing. I'm also using a black cell activator instead of a white cell activator to give a little bit more contrast. But if you haven't watched my other video, let me just explain. So a bloom pour is a different recipe and technique than many other fluid art techniques. It starts with a pillow, which is usually a house paint, something quite thick. The paint mixture is very thick overall. And then the pouring medium for the colors is also different. It's mixed up specifically. And if you're curious to know how I mix these, what my recipe is, the link is in the video description. And then it uses something called a cell activator, which is not a silicone oil. It's a particular thing that usually involves Australian Floetrol and Amsterdam paint. If you don't have the money to buy Australian Floetrol, also check the video link, because I have some ways of doing it for much cheaper. But this is Australian Floetrol and Amsterdam Black paint. So then these two colors, these are paints. This is Viridian and this is a metallic copper. So those were actually tube paints that I mixed with the pouring medium. Then these two are just straight mica pigments. And then these two are chameleon mica pigments, so they are color shifting. And let me show you the consistency here. You see how it's just very like luxurious? It's very much like honey or something like that, you know. It's viscous, but it flows really nicely off the stick as well. You don't want it kind of blup, blup. That would be too thick. So those are my colors: pillow, cell activator. I think I've talked through everything. Let's make a painting. First step to a bloom pour is putting on a nice pillow, which is the particular name for this basically giant puddle of your thickest paint that goes on the canvas first, and then the rest of your colors kind of float on top of that. So this is the majority of the paint on your canvas, is this pillow paint. So you want to make sure that you have enough. I think that'll be plenty. Just getting some of these air bubbles out of here. There were some very large air bubbles. Okay, get my canvas kind of recentered. There you go. And I have it off because I've got thumbtacks under the corners and they catch on the sides and they help hold it in place when I spin quite rapidly. So that's why it's like askew. It's because of the thumbtacks. So I'm going to start with the Viridian, because I do still want this to be the primary color of the painting. But I'm going to layer plenty of other colors on top, so it's not just this. Okay, so then I have this color shifting teal, which looks blue, but then it shines green. So I'm going to put that on top of the Viridian. Let's do some metallic copper next. Now I don't want quite as much of that. I want it to be more sort of green and gold. So then I have champagne. This is a chameleon powder, so it looks quite tan, but it shines this incredible like fuchsia pink. So I want that in there as kind of a nice surprise element. Okay, and then a bit of this metallic gold. And then this is spring rain, I think. I was going to say spring green, but I think it's called spring rain. So that's a nice metallic light green. And then we'll finish it all up with a little bit more of the Viridian, just so that there's a bit of that green all throughout. That's going to be cool. I'm excited about this blend of colors. Okay, so the cell activator is going to go in the middle. I'm going to put a little puddle of it right in the middle. Get this centered first. Yeah, that looks good. So I'm going to put a puddle of this in the middle. Then I'm going to use my mouth to kind of spread it out a little bit, and then my little hair dryer is going to help me blow it out in probably about 6 petals to spread it all out and make that hopefully beautiful lacing that the bloom technique is all about. All right, let's put the cell activator in. So this feels kind of thick, but the last time I did a bloom, I thinned my cell activator down with some more Australian Floetrol, and then it was too thin, and it all sank into the color. So I'm not doing that this time, hoping that it is right. Okay, spread it out and blow. Okay, so this is interesting. I had to use the high setting on my hairdryer to blow it out, and so whenever there's so much force to blow it out, it becomes harder to control. So some of these bits of lacing have gotten very kind of warped and wiggly. I'm gonna let this sit for just a minute to kind of let everything like settle in the middle, because if you try to tilt or spin your painting too quickly, there will be this divot in the middle, and when you go to tilt, that area will not move. Everything around it will shift, and it'll warp what you have in the middle. But if you let it sit for a couple minutes, then the pillow kind of evens back out on the underneath side, and then you can move the entire design a little bit better. The reason why this is important is because my center is now slightly off center. It's not that far off center compared to the canvas, but it's definitely off center compared to the design. So I'd like to be able to shift that a little bit to the side before I stretch it out. Well, I don't know that I was successful in having a less green bloom. There's still plenty of green. I do love the black cell activator in it though. I'm going to use a straw to bring up some more cells right here in the middle. I do have actually quite a deep layer of paint there. I think my canvas is sagging slightly and the pillow is deep. So that means that I can start moving this without having to worry too much. So I'm just going to gently back and forth it. Okay. I think that's looking pretty good from that direction. Looks pretty good from this direction. I'm going to give this one spin. Yes, I'm going to give it one spin to see how is it moving, how is it shaping, and then based on that, I might add some little swirls and stuff to hide some of the problem areas. We shall see. All right, let's spin. Okay, so it's moving very quickly. Man, this area is so pretty. Just like completely multicolored. I see the teal, I see the champagne, I see the gold, I see the copper. It's great. Then this section is not as good. It is pretty though. And it could be that as it stretches, I don't mind some of the strangeness. I'm going to add some pillow paint right here on the corners. Okay, having the corners covered should help as I stretch it so that these areas can get covered more easily. Yeah, there's still some places that I'm not sure about, but I'm going to spin it again and just see how it looks as I get it moving. Wow. This is striking, definitely, with the black and the green. I wish there was more lacing everywhere instead of missing this section, but this is beautiful. You know, the wisps and everything is really cool. So here I still need to spin it to get this edge off a little bit, but other than that, I think I'm close to done with this. Okay. So the center stayed very centered. That's fantastic. Man, I see so many metallics up in here, so that's really cool. And even these places where the lacing got warped, it's like, I don't know, it's like rivers flowing through the lacing, so it's really cool. Yeah, I think I'm happy with this. Let me give you a close-up. So I did actually spin this one more time because I just wanted to make sure that I got enough paint off that I wasn't going to have a cracking problem like last time. So my edges got spread out just a little bit more. But let me take you in and show you how cool this looks. So the Viridian in black is just amazing. Look at that lacing. And the black is holding up really well. It's not sinking too deep. That is just a really cool, like, river of lace. And then this is the section where you can see all the different colors. You can see the teal there shining as blue, the gold. There should be pockets of champagne that pops up as it dries, giving some surprise and warmth. And then this one's really pretty too. Nice little pocket of copper there. So strange little white blob there, and definitely a large white section with not a lot of lacing here, but it's still very beautiful the way the paints flow out in a watercolory kind of way. I love all the different transparent layers that you see. And then the middle is, it's not like picture perfect, but it's still pretty cool. So this turned out really well, and I can't wait to see how it looks when it is dry, so I will show you that part next. Okay, the painting is all dry. I have some good news and I have some bad news. Let's start with the bad news. The bad news is it cracked again. Do you see all those cracks? Also, add a little fly. Make a nice little trail right through the most beautiful and detailed section of the painting. But the main point is it cracked. It cracked all through the middle, it cracked along the edges. Actually, it had started drying the first day and I saw the cracking beginning and I was like, oh no! And so I covered it with a cardboard box to keep the air much more humid around it, thinking maybe it's drying too fast. But these really are not the cracks that I get when something dries too fast. The kind of cracks that I get when you have a really thick layer of paint and it dries too aggressively, it looks more like a canyon. So let me see if I can show you. This is an old Bloom paint skin that I've got. Do you see right here? That is the type of crack I get. Or right here? These wide, like canyons, giant cracks, where the surface dries and the underneath paint is still wet, and the only way for the underneath paint to dry is for the top to split. And so that's the kind of cracking that I get when your paint's too thick and it's drying too fast. This kind of cracking I've only ever had twice, with this painting and with my last green bloom, and I thought, okay, there's got to be a coincidence here. It must be something in my paint. So then I started thinking, you know, I saved my leftovers in these cups. This one is from a video that I did back in like December or January. So this is months old. And every time I'd open it up and I'd go, okay, this is a little too thick, I would add some more polyacrylic to thin it down. And I think the problem is that there's too much polyacrylic in some of my paint colors. So usually the bloom pouring medium, it's untinted house paint mixed with polyacrylic or mixed with Jo Sonja gloss varnish. I have a bottle of the Jo Sonjas and I want to try that next. I've never had a problem with polyacrylic before, so I don't know if this is because my can of polyacrylic was getting old or just because there's too much of it in there. Let me show you another reason why I think the polyacrylic in the mixture is to blame. My very first time trying polyacrylic was just as a varnish. So this is a painting from like 4 years ago. And it was this was a dustpan pour, which I thought was pretty cool, you know, for a beginner. Neat technique. But when I went to varnish it, look at these cracks. It completely cracked the surface, and I don't know why, because it had been a few weeks, my paint was cured, but somehow the polyacrylic cracked it. And it's these little fractures. Look at that crack pattern. Look at this crack pattern. It's almost identical. So this kind of cracking I think is caused by polyacrylic. Now scientifically I can't be sure whether it's because my polyacrylic is too old or whether there's just too much of it in the mixture. I think that's what it is. I think it's because my paints were old and so I had just added too much polyacrylic for the paint to be able to handle. And so it made that kind of cracking. So it's a bummer that this piece did not dry beautifully, but now that I know what the problem is, I can avoid it in the future, and so can you, and that is the good news. So thank you for joining me for this painting experiment. I hope you found it really helpful, and I hope it inspired you to try something new, and to not be afraid of things going wrong, because a lot of times when things go wrong, it can teach us, and then we can learn from it and grow to be better artists in the future. I will see you in the next video. Bye, guys!